I'm delighted to be here in Kennys Bookshop in Galway. I've been signing some copies of my book, We Need to Talk, which was published on the 21st of September. It's a book that covers both personal and professional experiences. I was Chief Medical Officer for 14 years until the summer of 2022 and led the public health response in Ireland to the COVID pandemic. Also, my wife Emer, at the age of 45, was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and lived with that condition for 8 years until she died on the 19th of February 2021. And this book tells the story of both of those experiences for me, for my family, and the impact that they had. And I'd like to read you just a little piece from the book, which is the prologue. Friday the 10th of January 2020, Dillinger's Restaurant, Ranelagh. I remember the evening of the 10th of January 2020 very clearly. It was my daughter Cloda's 19th birthday. Cloda loves Christmas, so much so that I used to think she wouldn't get through Christmas ending and school returning except for the fact that her birthday is on the 10th of January. This softens the blow for her. We usually celebrated in the same way, a family dinner in a local restaurant. Dillinger's has often been our choice. It's close enough to where we live, and that became more important as Emer's illness progressed. That year she was quite a bit more unwell, even than she had been. By then, we were into what in my mind I've characterised as the second 4 years of Emer's illness. She had been diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2012. Myeloma is incurable. Once that diagnosis is given, it's only a matter of time, and often not very much time. 3 or 4 years would be an average survival time, certainly at the stage at which Emer had been diagnosed. Those second 4 years were very different in quality to the previous 4. At first, she'd been relatively well, despite the disease and treatment. Even with the debilitating effects of myeloma, she'd been able to do things for herself, do things for and with the children, and continue her work as a public health doctor. During the second 4 years, she was in even more pain, and it was harder to manage. She had new lesions from the disease more often, and they caused greater side effects and localized problems. Gradually, she was losing her independence. She was no longer able to work or drive, and bit by bit she was losing the ability to care for herself. But she had beaten the odds. She had fought so hard for every extra year. There we were that Friday night, Emer, Cloda, Ronan and me, still together despite everything. That was something I knew that was very precious. Cloda turned 19 that day. Emer hadn't believed that she would live long enough to see her get to 18, and yet here she was. But instead of fully appreciating the wonder of this, I was preoccupied. I'd been picking up reports of a new coronavirus in a place called Wuhan in China. There wasn't very much information yet. A lot of the conversations I was having with public health colleagues were vague. What is this thing? What are we seeing? I'd been Chief Medical Officer for 12 years by then, and in that time I'd been through a variety of public health crises. There was SARS, also a coronavirus. There was the dioxin scandal, something that threw me out into the media on literally my very first day as Chief Medical Officer. And in 2009, there was swine flu, a global pandemic. So I had some experience. I had a clear understanding of what needed to be done in the event of a global incident. My mind was on how ready we were as a country, and of what else we needed to put into place. I was also conscious that we were in the middle of a general election campaign. The election date had been set for early February. The impact of that on any government department is very significant. Frankly, almost everything shuts down. Legally, ministers are still in place. Their positions are never vacant. There must always be a minister. But in practice, all new policy work stops and all ministerial duties come to a halt until a new person is appointed. Only essential emergency work takes place. It was an opportunity, therefore, for us to take stock of our plans, to focus on what needed to be done beyond the immediate. For me, this was specifically a time to make sure that we were properly prepared for what was coming. That was my focus as I sat in Dillinger's on that Friday night. I knew COVID-19 was going to be a problem. There was nothing about any of the early reports that gave me any reassurance. I knew we would be dealing with cases directly of this disease within a few weeks. No one at that stage, however, could have known that COVID would become the defining public health emergency of our time, but I knew enough to know that there would be trouble, and to be running through all of the things I needed to do, make sure of, and put in place before that came to pass. Even while I looked at a menu, ordered food, ate and talked. As I look back now, if I had known what was coming, had known how the next 2 years would unfold for all of us and for my family, I would have tried to put work from my mind and focus on the precious time we still had together. By the time the emergency phase of the COVID pandemic had passed, Emer was no longer with us. Ronan had done his leaving cert, without Emer, but guided by her advice almost to the end. Clodagh had spent most of her first year in college, attending online for the final term. Both had been completely isolated from their friends for months at a time, and I worked many 7-day weeks while Emer grew sicker. I look back now at the people sitting at that table, and I want to tell myself, pay attention to what's in front of you now, make the most of it, because it's fragile. Thank you.